You do not start life as a glamorous favorite. You start as someone's profit margin. You are born in a cramped slave room in Athens, or dragged in from a raid on Thrace. Either way, you are property before you are a person. If you are war loot, your story begins with fire and shouting. Cities in Thrace, Asia Minor, and the Black Sea coast fall to Greek armies. Prisoners line up in chains. Men sort people, checking teeth and muscles, with no feeling at all. Strong bodies go to farms. Skilled hands go to workshops. The pretty boys are flagged for household use. You are in that group. If you are born in the house, things look calmer but are not kinder. Your mother is a slave. You are oikogenais, born into the household. That sounds warm. It is not. It just means the owner does not have to pay for you. You grow up under watch. You learn early that the wrong tone can earn a slap. In a city such as Athens, tens of thousands of people live this way. Some historians think there were as many slaves as citizens. You are one small body inside that number. No vote. No name in any public record. The law calls you andropodon, a man-footed thing. By the time you are around 10 to 12, people start to talk about your future. Not your future, really. Your owner's. Traders visit from the port of Piraeus, or from Corinth. They look you over, teeth, shoulders, hair. No one asks what you want. That question does not exist. The slave market is your big debut. Buyers crowd under awnings. Some people are branded. Some are chained. A few, like you, are cleaned up to look valuable. You stand on a small platform while the dealer lists your features, your age, your good behavior. You are sold. A name is called. Money changes hands. That is the moment your path narrows. You have a new master. Your life as a future concubine has officially begun, purchased for household and pleasure. Your new owner does not carry you home himself. A servant leads you through crowded streets, while your buyer talks business with friends. You walk a half step behind, eyes lowered. You already know the rule. Stay quiet, stay useful, stay alive. The house you enter is not huge, but it feels like a maze. Courtyard in the center, men's quarters on one side, women's quarters hidden deeper in the back, storage rooms, kitchens, slave rooms. You will not have your own space. You are an extra body, fitted into whatever corner the household can spare. An older slave explains the layout like a drill instructor. Do not cross into the women's rooms without orders. Do not speak when free men are talking unless they speak to you first. Do not look guests in the eye for too long. Every line is a rule that keeps you from being beaten. Your owner looks at you like a craftsman inspecting a tool. He tests your Greek, asks where you come from, maybe changes your name on the spot to something he likes better. Your past shrinks to a single sentence. Your future sits in his hands. You start with basic tasks: carrying water, cleaning cups, sweeping floors, running small errands to the market. These jobs are not random. He is watching how you move, how fast you obey, whether you lose your temper when someone mocks you. You notice patterns. The owner calls you more often than he calls others. He likes you nearby during meals, even when other slaves could do the job. At night, he keeps you within reach, not in the rough common room by the kitchen but closer to his bedchamber. To the city, he is your Kyrios, the legal head of the oikos, and you have no standing against his will. No one says the word concubine out loud. Respectable men pretend such roles do not exist in their own homes. Yet other slaves know. They see where you sleep. They see how the master's hand lingers on your shoulder. In account books, you are a line of expense. In law, you are an object. Inside this house, though, your body is turning into something else. A private luxury, a status symbol, a quiet secret the walls learn to keep. Groomed for elite male company. Your training starts fast. The house wants results, not potential. An older male slave, often a pedagogos, becomes your handler. He teaches you how to stand, how to walk, how to serve wine without spilling a drop. He has scars on his back, so you take every lesson seriously. Grooming is a daily ritual. Body hair is removed with bronze razors or pumice stones. Olive oil covers your skin, then scrapers pull it off with sweat and dirt. Your hair is styled to fit current taste. In Athens around the 5th century BCE, shorter cuts show discipline. Perfume comes next, usually imported from Egypt or Cyprus, and worth more than most workers earn in a month. You smell like wealth, even if you will never own any. You learn table etiquette. Pour wine from a crater at the right angle. Hold the jug with your right hand. Keep your wrists steady. Do not talk over free men. If someone jokes about you, laugh lightly. If someone insults you, stay silent. One wrong reaction can turn into punishment. Education follows. You memorize short poems by Anacreon and Sappho. You learn songs played on the aulos. You practice reading simple Greek texts. You do not get full schooling, but you gain enough to hold small conversations. Your owner wants you to seem charming, not clever. A clever slave makes people nervous. Physical fitness matters. You stretch, run, and practice basic dance steps. You handle cups and trays until they feel like extensions of your hands. Your posture becomes straight, your movements smooth. This is not vanity. This is training to raise your master's status. A graceful attendant makes him look powerful and refined. Clothing becomes part of the job. You wear lighter, finer fabric than work slaves. Not expensive, but clean and styled. You are meant to be seen, not hidden. Other slaves notice the difference and whisper. Favor breeds jealousy. You learn to watch your back, even in the slave quarters. Your owner tests you constantly. He watches your reactions to guests, to stress, to touch. He wants a companion who pleases without effort. You feel your old self fading. Your new role forms layer by layer. Polished, obedient, attractive, and always controlled. Serving at all male symposia nights. Your real workload begins when the sun goes down. The symposium is the heart of elite male life in cities like Athens in the 5th century BCE. It looks like a party, but it runs on rules tighter than a temple ritual. Free men recline on couches. You stand. That detail says everything. Wine flows, but never straight. You mix it in a crater with water, usually 3 parts water to 1 part wine. Too strong, and the night turns into chaos. Too weak, and guests complain that the host is cheap. Guess wrong, and someone blames you. The host stays blameless. You carry cups, called kylikes, from couch to couch. You refill, you wipe drips, you avoid stepping on cushions. You serve food in small bites, often figs, cheese, and bread. You also handle the fun parts. Music, games, flirting. The aulos player does the music. You get the rest. Men debate politics, philosophy, and who insulted whom at the last festival. They praise democracy and then treat everyone who serves them like furniture. One guest quotes Homer. Another burps loud enough to shake the walls. You keep your face calm. Your job is to make them feel clever and admired. Guests know that certain slaves are available. You are one of them. If your owner taps the couch, you move closer. If a guest touches your wrist, you do not pull away. Consent is not a word here. The law gives you none. The room fills with smoke from oil lamps and cheap incense. Voices rise. Laughter can switch to anger in seconds. A drunk guest may grab you or throw wine in your face for a joke. You cannot react. A reaction means punishment later. The symposium also builds your owner's status. A beautiful, skilled attendant signals wealth and control. You are a walking display of luxury. Men judge your master by how well you serve and how well you look. Navigating power, desire, and jealousy. Daylight does not make your position safer. It only makes it clearer. You now live in a triangle of power that can crush you fast. At the top sits your owner, legally allowed to beat, sell, or loan you out. Under him stands his wife, the Kyria of the household. She has no political power outside the house, but inside these walls, she rules the women and slaves. You are a threat to her pride and her status. Greek marriage in Athens, especially in the 5th century BCE, is about heirs and alliances. A wife guards her role as mother of citizens. You are a reminder that her husband seeks pleasure elsewhere. She cannot shame him in public, so she may punish you quietly. A bad look from her can mean fewer rations, harsher tasks, or orders that leave you exhausted before the next symposium. Other slaves watch the attention you get. They scrub floors and haul grain while you pour wine and wear perfume worth 8 drachmas a jar. Favor breeds resentment. A kitchen slave may trip you on purpose. A guard may correct you with a fist when no one sees. You cannot report it. The steward will tell you to behave better. Free youths in the household can turn hostile too. A teenage son wants to prove his status. He sees his father favoring a slave boy. That burns. He may insult you in front of others or demand you serve him with the same obedience. You must obey. The law backs him. You have no rights under Athenian statutes, recorded in speeches by men like Demosthenes. Your owner's affection is dangerous. If he praises you too openly, guests joke that he is ruled by a slave. That hurts his honor. He might respond by acting cold or violent to prove control. One tender night can lead to a beating the next day. Rumors travel fast in the household. The slightest hint that you show preference for another person can trigger rage. Your body is not yours. Desire is a one-way street. You learn silence, speed, and careful smiles. You study moods like a hunter studies tracks. One wrong gesture can shift the balance. Favor can lift you high. It can also drop you hard. laws, morality, and public respectability. Athens in the 5th and 4th centuries BCE loves rules. It loves courts. It loves speeches about honor. It just does not love you. Under Athenian law, a slave is property. You cannot testify in court unless tortured, because the system claims slaves only tell the truth under pain. Nice civic values. Legal speeches by men like Demosthenes and Aeschines openly state that being sexually submissive marks a man as weak and unfit for citizenship. You are not a citizen, but your presence still threatens a man's public image. Here is the big twist. Elite men can sleep with slaves, male or female, without penalty. The shame lands only if a freeborn male takes a passive role. So when your owner uses you, he feels protected. If anyone suggests he enjoys you too much, rivals can attack him in court for lacking self-control. They do not care about you. They care about his reputation. Public respectability is everything. Men speak in the assembly, serve as jurors, and march in festivals. They must look disciplined. Keeping a male concubine is fine as long as it stays in the shadows. If rumors spread that a man lets a slave influence him, his political career dies. One joke during a symposium can become courtroom ammo. You become a legal risk. Your presence in the men's quarters can fuel gossip. A rival might hint that your owner has lost his Andrea, his manly virtue. Aeschines used that line of attack in trials, mocking opponents for letting young favorites rule them. The hypocrisy is loud. The city celebrates beauty in art and theater. Vase paintings show scenes with slaves serving and pleasing their masters. Yet the same society acts shocked when someone admits to enjoying what everyone sees. For you, the danger is constant. If your owner fears damage to his name, he can drop you fast, sell you, hide you, lock you away. The law will not stop him. Your job is not only to serve, you must help protect his public mask. Fail, and you become the problem he solves with a quick sale. Morality here has one rule: reputation first, humanity last. Life beyond the household walls. When your owner steps outside, you become his shadow. Agora, baths, temples, festivals, you trail half a step behind. Athens, in the 5th century BCE, is busy, loud, and sharp. You are in the middle of it, but never really part of it. On market days, you follow him to the agora. Citizens argue about grain prices, war plans, and who lied in the assembly. You carry baskets, coins, and whatever he buys. Your clothing marks you as a slave. Simple chiton, no fancy cloak, no weapons. If anyone bumps you, they do not say sorry. They shove you again and blame you for existing. Your owner talks politics with friends. You stand close enough to pour wine from a street vendor, far enough not to interrupt. You hear names: Pericles, Cleon, generals, orators. The city debates its future while you keep track of bags and jars. If something gets stolen, the beating lands on you. At festivals, your world widens a little. During the Panathenea, crowds pour up to the Acropolis. You go along to carry offerings or stools. You see huge processions, bright textiles, and sacred statues. Citizens take pride in their city. You take mental notes on which streets stay shaded and which alleys are safe to slip through if trouble starts. Bathhouses and gymnasia are another lesson. Free men strip, oil up, and talk sports. You stay at the edge, holding towels, oil flasks, and sandals. Your body is good enough to use at home, not good enough to share the floor. If someone calls, you move. If someone throws something at you, you pick it up. Police in Athens are often public slaves too, many from Scythian origins, armed with bows. They can drag citizens to court. They can also hit you without anyone asking questions. You live in a city where even the slaves who carry whips outrank you. Still, there are tiny pockets of air. At the public fountain, you trade quick comments with other slaves. A joke, a complaint, a rumor about a kinder master in another house. Short moments, but they remind you that you are not the only one trapped in this system. Aging out of desired youth. Your value has an expiration date. In Athens, the ideal age for a beautiful male companion sits around the mid-teens to early 20s. Vase paintings from the late 6th and 5th centuries BCE show the same pattern. Young bodies get praised, older ones get ignored. You feel the shift the moment it starts. It begins small. Your owner calls you less often during meals. He asks another slave to pour wine at a symposium. Guests glance past you. The jokes that once targeted you for beauty now skip you entirely. Silence cuts deeper than insults. Your grooming routine changes. The expensive perfume disappears. The steward hands you cheap oil that smells like old olives. Your clothes become rougher. You lose access to the finer fabrics that marked you as a favorite. Each change is its own verdict. Tasks shift fast. You get moved toward general labor, cleaning floors, carrying wood, running errands alone. You are still in the house, but not in the center. The household needs bodies to work, not aging ornaments. The emotional change hits harder. Your owner treats you colder. He sees you as a reminder that he is getting older too. Greek men fear looking ruled by desire. Keeping an older male favorite makes people talk. Rival politicians use that line in court, accusing opponents of being controlled by aging lovers. No one wants that reputation. In some households, a younger slave replaces you. Everyone sees it. The whispers sting. You watch your former position handed to someone who looks the way you did 5 or 10 years ago. You feel bitterness rise, but you swallow it. Anger is dangerous. You may be sent to a workshop owned by the household. Shoemaking, pottery, metalwork. Skilled slaves can bring profit. If you have talent, a new path opens. But it is still under control. If not, you become simple labor, hauling goods or grinding grain. Some aging concubines end up supervising younger slaves. It sounds like a promotion. It is not. You become the guard dog for someone else's pleasure. Paths to manumission or lifelong bondage. Freedom becomes the new fantasy once beauty stops paying the bills. In Athens, manumission exists, but it is rare. Historians estimate only a small percentage of slaves ever gain it. Most stay enslaved until they die. You learn that fast. The first path is loyal service. Some owners free long-serving slaves in their wills. They like the idea of appearing generous after death. It costs them nothing at that point. Greek wills, recorded in inscriptions, show freed slaves gaining limited rights. They can marry, buy property, run a business. Sounds great until you read the fine print. Most freed slaves become metics, resident foreigners. They must pay a monthly metoikion tax and stay tied to their former owner as a patron. The law demands ongoing obedience. If you anger him, he can haul you into court. Freedom comes with a leash. Another path appears if your owner needs money. A skilled slave who brings profit is worth more free than idle. Some craftsmen buy their freedom slowly, paying fees over time. You do not earn wages, so good luck building savings. Maybe you pick up coins during errands or get tips from drunk guests. You hide every obol you find. If caught, it is theft. Emotional bonds sometimes help. A master who once adored you may decide to reward you. Do not trust it fully. Love fades, reputations shift, and heirs hate sharing inheritance with freed slaves. The family may block manumission or contest the will. Legal speeches by men like Isaiah show families fighting to keep slaves as property. There is a darker route, replacement. Once a new favorite enters the house, you become less risky. Freeing you makes space and reduces gossip. It is not kindness. It is household management. If freedom comes, it is public. A ceremony at a shrine or in front of witnesses records your new status. You get a name again, sometimes the one you were born with, sometimes the one your owner gave you. People call you apollutheros, freedman. It feels huge. Then the rules hit. You cannot vote, hold office, or serve on juries. Citizenship stays locked away. Most concubines never reach this point. They age, work, weaken, and die in the household. A quiet burial, often without a marker. Memory, silence, and historical traces. When you die, there is no big scene, no public funeral, no long speech from a famous orator. You slip out of the house the way you lived in it, quietly. Someone wraps your body. Someone takes you to a grave outside the city walls. Maybe you get a simple marker, maybe not. Your owner's family moves on fast. They worry about dowries, property, and citizenship status. They do not argue over your legacy. The law does not care. Athenian records focus on citizen men, their land, and their lawsuits. You never appear on a voting list. You never appear on a jury roll. For the city, you barely existed. So where do we even find you? In fragments. In side comments. In places you were never meant to lead. Legal speeches give one line here and there. Aeschines or Demosthenes will throw in a jab about an opponent ruled by a slave or a favorite boy. You show up as an insult, not a person. Your body becomes courtroom trash talk. Comedy does it too. Playwrights like Aristophanes crack jokes about slave boys, foreign attendants, and spoiled house favorites. The audience laughs. They know the type. You are a punchline on stage because you are already a tool at home. Inscriptions sometimes list freed slaves by name. A few lines cut into stone. Who freed them? Which god witnessed it? What duties remain? If you were lucky enough to reach that status, your name might be there. Short, formal. No mention of what you actually lived through. Most concubines leave nothing written at all. No letters. No diaries. no direct voice. Modern historians dig through shards, speeches, and jokes to rebuild your world. So, your story survives in a strange way, not through your own words, but through the traces of people who owned you, joked about you, and never asked what you thought. Your life was real. The record is the part that stayed small. The emperor is looking at you. Not at your credentials, not at your family name, not at anything you've accomplished, just at you. And in that moment, your entire future splits in two. One path leads to unimaginable wealth, palaces built in your honor, your family elevated to nobility overnight. The other path ends with you drinking poison in a prison cell, while soldiers dig up your grave to make sure you're actually dead. Both paths are the same path. That's the problem. Welcome to your new career as a male concubine in ancient China. Or, as the historians more delicately put it, a male favorite. The job pays extraordinarily well. Almost nobody survives it. You're not as unusual as you think. Here's the thing that might surprise you. In ancient China, particularly during the Han Dynasty, having a male lover wasn't scandalous. It wasn't hidden. It wasn't even particularly interesting gossip. According to historian Brett Hinch, who literally wrote the book on this subject, all 10 emperors who ruled the first 2 centuries of the Han Dynasty were openly bisexual, every single one of them. Your emperor isn't breaking any taboos by taking a fancy to you. He's following a tradition as old as the dynasty itself. The historian Sima Qian, writing in the records of the Grand Historian around 100 BCE, noted that courtiers and eunuchs could gain imperial favor through appearance and charm, just as well as women could. This wasn't a condemnation, just an observation. The official histories even have dedicated chapters listing each emperor's male favorites, complete with their names, backgrounds, and what gifts they received. Your name might end up in one of those chapters someday. Whether that's a good thing depends entirely on how your story ends. How you got here. So how does one become a male concubine to the Son of Heaven? There's no application process, no talent competition, no ancient Chinese equivalent of a reality dating show. The path varies. Sometimes it's pure accident, being in the wrong place at the right time. Take Deng Tong, who lived during the reign of Emperor Wen in the 2nd century BCE. Deng Tong was a nobody, a boat ferryman working near paths used by the imperial court, when the emperor had a peculiar dream. In this dream, Emperor Wen was trying to ascend to heaven but kept struggling to rise until a mysterious, yellow-headed man with his belt tied at the back pushed him upward. The emperor, being an emperor, launched a nationwide search for anyone matching this description. He found Deng Tong. Even better, Deng Tong's name sounded similar to the phrase ascending smoothly in Chinese. The emperor took this as a cosmic sign, and Deng Tong went from poverty to palace overnight, becoming one of the wealthiest men in the empire because someone dreamed about him. Your own story might be less mystical. Maybe you were a minor official, a clerk or secretary, and you caught the emperor's eye during routine palace business. That's what happened to Dong Xian, who started as a low-ranking secretary and ended up becoming the most powerful official in the empire simply because Emperor Ai saw him and liked what he saw. Maybe you're the brother of a beautiful woman who caught the emperor's attention first, and he decided your family had good genes. Li Yannian got his start this way. His sister became one of Emperor Wu's favorite consorts, and suddenly Li Yannian found himself running the Imperial Bureau of Music and spending every day and night by the emperor's side. The point is, you didn't apply for this job. The job applied for you. Your daily life in the palace. Let's say the emperor has taken a liking to you. What does your day actually look like? First, proximity is everything. Unlike other courtiers who must request audiences, who must navigate layers of bureaucracy and protocol just to glimpse the imperial presence, you have access, constant access. Historical records describe male favorites as not leaving the ruler's side, day or night. You sleep where the emperor sleeps. You wake when the emperor wakes. You accompany him to meals, to meetings, to those long, boring rituals where he has to stand around looking divine while priests chant for hours. Your living quarters have upgraded considerably. Instead of whatever cramped room you occupied before, you now reside in the inner palace, the part of the Forbidden City where only the emperor, his women, his eunuchs, and his favorites are allowed. The reason eunuchs dominate palace service is precisely to prevent any other men from having access to the emperor's consorts. But you're not a eunuch. You're the exception, the man who doesn't need to be castrated to enter the inner sanctum, because the emperor wants you intact. You don't have formal duties, per se. You're not managing anything. You're not commanding troops or drafting policy documents. Your job is to be pleasant company, to be there when the emperor wants to talk, to be silent when he wants quiet, to laugh at his jokes, to never, ever remind him that he's mortal and his decisions have consequences. The historian Ban Gu noted that many favorites didn't have any particular talents. They simply excelled at being agreeable. The perks are insane. Now let's talk about what you get out of this arrangement, because the compensation package is genuinely wild. Emperor Ai gave Dong Xian 10,000 pickles of grain per year, which is roughly equivalent to the income of a major noble estate. But that was just the beginning. Dong Xian's father was made a marquis, his younger brother received a government position, extended family members who had never met the emperor suddenly found themselves with titles and income. Slaves in the Dong household were given cash grants. The entire family moved to a new residence on the grounds of the imperial palace itself, built specifically for them at imperial expense. Deng Tong's perks went even further. Emperor Wen was so devoted to him that when a fortune teller predicted Deng Tong would die in poverty, the emperor decided to prove fate wrong by making Deng Tong unfathomably rich. He granted Deng Tong an entire copper mountain in Shu Commandery, along with the exclusive right to mint coins from it. This former boat ferryman who caught the emperor's attention through a dream, became so wealthy that his personal currency, called Deng Tong coins, became synonymous with money itself throughout the empire. His coins were famous for their quality, their shine, their consistent weight. The word for his coins basically became a word for money. Your family's fortunes rise with yours. That cousin who ignored you at family gatherings? He's very friendly now. That uncle who thought you'd never amount to anything? He's telling everyone he always knew you had potential. In ancient Chinese society, where family connections determine everything, becoming an imperial favorite doesn't just transform your life, it transforms your entire lineage. The awkward political reality. Here's where things get complicated. You're not just a romantic companion. Whether you intended it or not, you've become a political figure. Every minister, every general, every ambitious official who wants imperial favor now has to go through you. Historical records indicate that during certain reigns, all high ministers had to approach the emperor through his favorites. You control access to the most powerful person in the world. That makes you incredibly valuable to some people and incredibly dangerous to others. The court divides itself into factions. There are those who seek your patronage, who shower you with gifts and flattery, who name their children after you hoping you'll notice. And there are those who despise everything you represent, an unqualified pretty face-wielding influence that should belong to scholars and generals who earned their positions through merit and service. The Confucian officials, in particular, tend to view you as a symptom of everything wrong with imperial governance. You need to be careful here. The smart favorites cultivate relationships with powerful officials, building networks of mutual obligation that can protect them when circumstances change. The not-so-smart favorites alienate everyone, assuming the emperor's favor will last forever. Spoiler, it won't. The cut sleeve incident. Some context on that phrase you might have heard. The passion of the cut sleeve. It comes from a story about Dong Xian and Emperor Ai, and it tells you everything about how these relationships worked. One afternoon, Emperor Ai and Dong Xian were napping together in the imperial chambers. When the emperor woke up, he needed to rise for an audience with his ministers, but Dong Xian had fallen asleep with his head resting on the emperor's long silk sleeve. Rather than disturb his sleeping favorite, the emperor drew his sword and cut off his own sleeve, leaving Dong Xian to rest peacefully while he went to attend to matters of state. The story spread through the court immediately, as court gossip always does. But here's the interesting part. The reaction wasn't scandal or mockery. Instead, courtiers throughout the palace began cutting one of their own sleeves in imitation, turning it into a fashion statement. They were signaling their sophisticated appreciation for romantic gestures, aligning themselves with the emperor's values, maybe hoping to attract imperial attention themselves. The cut sleeve became a trend. This incident gave Chinese language one of its most enduring euphemisms for male same-sex love. Duan Xiu, the cut sleeve. 2,000 years later, the phrase still exists. The fashion consequences. Here's something the history books don't always emphasize. You're a trendsetter now. When Emperor Ai's courtiers started cutting their sleeves in imitation of his romantic gesture, they weren't just being sycophantic. They were participating in a broader phenomenon where male favorites set fashion standards for the entire court. Whatever you wear, however you style your hair, whatever accessories you favor, other ambitious young men will start copying you in hopes of catching imperial attention themselves. The records of the Grand Historian mentions that during one emperor's reign, courtiers began imitating the appearance and grooming of the current favorite, so aggressively that the palace was filled with a crowd of lookalikes. Everyone wanted to be the next Dong Xian, the next Deng Tong, the next man to catch the imperial eye and transform their family's fortunes overnight. This creates its own strange pressure. You can't just exist in the palace. You're being watched and imitated. Your preferences become trends. Your habits become fashionable. If you have a slight limp, expect to see courtiers affecting a similar gait within weeks. If you favor a particular shade of silk, the tailors will be swamped with orders for identical fabric. You're not just the emperor's companion. You're an influencer in the most literal sense, your every choice rippling outward through court society. Your predecessor, Mizi Xia and the leftover peach. The cut sleeve wasn't even the first such phrase. Long before the Han dynasty, there was Mizi, Xia, and Duke Ling of Wei, whose relationship produced another famous idiom. Mizi Xia was strolling with the duke through the royal orchard when he bit into a peach and found it exceptionally sweet. Without thinking, he offered the remaining half to his sovereign, wanting to share the pleasure. Duke Ling was so moved by this gesture of intimate affection that he publicly acknowledged his love for Silla right there in the orchard. From this moment came the phrase, yu tao, the bitten peach or the leftover peach, another euphemism for male romantic love. The story has a darker coda though. Years later, when Xia had aged and fallen from favor, the Duke used this same incident against him, complaining that Xia had once insulted him by offering leftover food. The same gesture that demonstrated love when the Duke was smitten became evidence of disrespect once the Duke's feelings changed. Remember that. Gestures don't have inherent meanings. Their interpretation depends entirely on how your emperor feels about you at the moment. The shared pillow tree. Not all stories of male love in ancient China ended in political tragedy. Some ended in something closer to romance, at least according to legend. The tale of Pyongyang and Wang Zhongxian describes two men who fell in love at first sight and were as affectionate as husband and wife, sharing the same coverlet and pillow with as much closeness as a married couple. They lived together openly, their relationship accepted by those around them. When they died, they were buried together, side by side. According to the story, a tree grew from their grave with branches that intertwined and embraced each other. Locals called it the shared pillow tree, and it became a symbol of devoted love that transcends death. Whether the story is historical fact or romantic embellishment, it tells you something about ancient Chinese attitudes. There was space for these relationships to be beautiful, not just scandalous. But you're not Pyongyang. You're not a private citizen whose love life is his own business. You're entangled with the emperor, which means you're entangled with the state, which means your love story has political stakes that could get you killed. When the emperor gets sick, your intimacy with the emperor extends to some genuinely unpleasant territories. Remember Deng Tong, the former ferryman who became a coin-minting tycoon? When Emperor Wen developed a painful abscess that became infected, Deng Tong personally sucked the pus out of it to prevent the infection from spreading. No hesitation, no visible disgust, just complete devotion to the emperor's well-being, even when that well-being required putting your mouth on a festering wound. The emperor was so touched by this that he decided to test his own son, the crown prince, Lu Qi. He asked the prince to do the same thing. The prince hesitated. He couldn't bring himself to do it. When the emperor told him that Deng Tong had already done this multiple times without complaint, the prince felt humiliated and developed a burning resentment toward Deng Tong that would have catastrophic consequences later. So yes, being a male favorite isn't all silk robes and private apartments. Sometimes it means medical procedures that would make a modern nurse quit on the spot. The question is, how devoted are you willing to appear? The entertainment value. Not all male favorites were mere companions. Some had genuine talents that served imperial purposes. Li Yannian was a castrated musician, originally employed in the Directorate of Palace Kennels, despite his gifts lying in music rather than dog breeding. When his sister caught Emperor Wu's attention and became a favored consort, Li Yannian's career prospects improved dramatically. Emperor Wu placed him in charge of the Imperial Bureau of Music, where he collected and arranged folk songs from across the empire for use in state rituals and imperial entertainment. Historical accounts describe Li Yannian as having a beautiful voice and considerable skill as a composer. He was talented and he was favored. The combination made him valuable in multiple ways. The emperor could enjoy his company and simultaneously benefit from his musical contributions to court culture. But even talent doesn't guarantee safety. After Li Yannian's sister died from complications of childbirth, the Li family fell out of favor. Li Yannian and his brother were accused of having inappropriate relationships with women at court, and both were executed. The accusations may have been true, or they may have been pretexts. When an emperor wants to be rid of someone, justifications can be manufactured. The fall from grace. Here's the part nobody tells you when you're first catching the emperor's eye. Almost none of this ends well. Dong Xian's story is perhaps the most dramatic. Emperor Ai loved him so intensely that on his deathbed, the emperor ordered his throne to be passed to Dong Xian, not to any member of the imperial family. He wanted his favorite to become emperor. Think about that for a moment. The most powerful man in China loved another man so much that he tried to give him the entire empire. The court rejected this immediately, of course. Grand Empress Dowager Wang seized the imperial seal, summoned her nephew Wang Mang back to the palace, and transferred command of the imperial guard away from Dong Xian. Within days, Dong Xian was stripped of his position, banned from the palace, and facing impeachment on charges of failing to properly attend to the dying emperor. He and his wife committed suicide. Wang Mang, the Empress Dowager's nephew who took power in the aftermath, had Dong Xian's grave dug up to verify he was actually dead, then reburied him in a prison cemetery. Dong Xian's male relatives were banished to the remote southern frontier. The man who had been the second most powerful figure in the empire went from that pinnacle to suicide in a matter of days. That's how fast it happens. The fortune teller was right. Remember Deng Tong and that fortune teller who predicted he'd die in poverty? Emperor Wen was so determined to prove the prediction wrong that he gave Deng Tong literal mountains of copper to mint into coins. It didn't matter. When Emperor Wen died, his son Emperor Jing took the throne. This was the same son who had been humiliated by not being able to suck pus from his father's abscess when Deng Tong had done it so willingly. Emperor Jing had been nursing that grudge for years. Almost immediately, Deng Tong was stripped of his official position. Then someone conveniently accused him of illegally smuggling his own coins beyond the imperial borders. Evidence was found. His assets were confiscated, leaving him not just poor but actually in debt to the state. The elder princess tried to help him, providing food and clothing as a loan, so it couldn't be seized, but even that kindness had its limits. Sima Qian recorded that Deng Tong died without a single copper coin to his name, as a dependent in someone else's home. The fortune teller had predicted exactly this outcome. All the emperor's love, all the mountains of copper, all the exclusive minting rights in the world couldn't change Deng Tong's fate once his imperial protector was gone. The philosophical indifference. Here's something that might comfort you, or might disturb you, depending on your perspective. Ancient Chinese philosophy really didn't care about your romantic life. Confucianism, the dominant ethical framework of imperial China, was primarily concerned with social harmony, filial piety, and proper relationships between ruler and subject, parent and child, husband and wife. It had surprisingly little to say about male same-sex relationships. As long as you fulfilled your family obligations, particularly the duty to produce heirs, what you did romantically was your own business. Most male favorites were married to women and had children. Their relationships with emperors existed alongside, not instead of, their heterosexual marriages. Buddhism, as it developed in China, was generally indifferent as well. The serious condemnation of homosexuality didn't really arrive until the Song dynasty, around 960 CE, when scholars rediscovered a 6th century Indian Buddhist text that took a dimmer view of same-sex relationships. Before that rediscovery, you could enjoy imperial favor with a relatively clear conscience, at least religiously speaking. The danger to your soul wasn't theological, it was purely political. The succession problem. One of the consistent criticisms leveled against emperors with male favorites was neglect of the harem and, consequently, failure to produce heirs. Emperor Ai is the perfect example. The historian Ban Gu recorded that, by nature, Emperor Ai did not care for women. Unlike his predecessors, who maintained male favorites alongside extensive harems and multiple children, Emperor Ai never produced an heir. He died at around 25 years old, childless, and his attempt to pass the throne to Dong Xian threw the dynasty into crisis. If you're a male favorite to an emperor who's neglecting his reproductive duties, you become a convenient scapegoat. You're the reason the empire lacks stability. You're the reason the succession is unclear. Never mind that the emperor's preferences are his own. The court needs someone to blame, and you're the obvious target. What the historians really thought. The ancient Chinese historians who recorded these relationships weren't moralists in the modern sense. They didn't condemn same-sex love as inherently wrong. But they did have concerns. Sima Qian's chapter on male favorites in the records of the Grand Historian reads as almost sympathetic, a collection of stories about opportunistic but misguided men who suffered misfortune through poor judgment. He wasn't criticizing them for loving men, he was criticizing them for loving power and not being careful enough about how they wielded it. Bangu, writing the Book of Han a century later, took a harsher view. He portrayed male favorites as scheming villains who threatened the survival of the dynasty. But even Bangu wasn't objecting to the romance itself. He was objecting to excessive favoritism, to emperors who let their personal relationships override their responsibilities to the state. Neither historian said same-sex love was wrong. They said unchecked favoritism was dangerous. The distinction matters. The eternal trade-off. So here you are, a male favorite in the Han Dynasty palace. What do you actually have? You have wealth beyond imagination. You have access to the most powerful person in the world. You have the ability to elevate your entire family, to place your relatives in positions of influence, to accumulate land and titles and treasuries full of jade. You have historians writing down your name, ensuring you'll be remembered for millennia. You also have a target on your back. Every ambitious official sees you as an obstacle. Every moralistic Confucian sees you as a symbol of imperial excess. Every empress dowager sees you as a threat to proper succession. Every future emperor might have a grudge against you that they're waiting to settle. Your survival depends entirely on one person's continued affection. The moment that affection fades, the moment that person dies, the moment political circumstances shift, everything you've built can collapse in days. Is it worth it? The men who lived this life never got to answer that question in retrospect. They chose their paths, accepted their risks, enjoyed their rewards, and faced their endings. Deng Tong died penniless. Dong Xian died by his own hand. Mizi Xia died forgotten after his duke turned against him. Li Yannian died executed on dubious charges. And yet, New favorites kept emerging with each new emperor. The rewards were too great, the temptation too strong. 2,000 years later, we're still talking about them. Their names are recorded, their stories resonate. In a strange way, they achieved a kind of immortality. But they didn't get to enjoy it. You arrive in the world in Seorabeol, capital of the Silla kingdom in early 7th century Korea. Hills surround the city. Royal tomb mounds rise nearby. Gold crowns and glass beads sit under the earth while you cry and kick on a wooden floor. You do not know it, but this city will control the southeast of the peninsula for centuries. Seorabeol is crowded for its time. Tens of thousands of people live inside and around the walls. Palace offices line the Wolseong area. Monks walk toward temple sites that will grow into huge complexes. Grain, iron, and cloth move through markets every day. From the start, you breathe air filled with dust, incense, and politics. Your parents are not farmers. They belong to the bone rank system, the frozen ladder that runs Silla. That system sorts every family into fixed ranks. Rank decides your office, your marriage options, your clothing, even the width of your house gate. Your birth is less acute event and more a line on a very strict chart. Officials track families in careful lists. At the top are sacred bone royals. Below them are true bone nobles. Under that sit layered head ranks. Each step down means fewer rights, smaller houses, and less access to real power. Colors on your clothes are controlled by this chart. Which saddle you sit on, which seat you take at a feast, which title you may dream of, all of it sits inside this system that started long before you and does not care about your feelings. You are probably in the true bone group or a very high head rank. That is the only way you will matter later. Servants move through the courtyard. Tutors visit. Your mother and father can read and write in classical Chinese, the script used for laws and state records. You will study it as soon as you can hold a brush without chewing it. Childhood still has games, but they are watched. You bow to older relatives in a set order. You learn who sits where at meals. You hear which cousin can marry into which branch of which clan. You see who lowers their eyes when a higher rank walks by. You grow up inside rules you did not vote for. The kingdom is training you for something. It has plans for that pretty, high-ranking skull of yours. Selected as elite flower youth. You hit your early teens and suddenly adults start staring at your face a lot. Not in a loving parent way, in a recruitment way. Silla needs new Hwarang, and the kingdom likes them young, noble, and annoyingly good-looking. Scouts from high families and officials look over boys from true bone and top head ranks. They check manners, posture, and how you move in a crowded hall. You are watched at feasts, in family rituals, even during archery practice. Your life turns into one long audition. The record from a Chinese envoy in Silla describes young nobles with powdered faces, fine clothes, and people crowding around them in public. The envoy did not invent that. He wrote what he saw in the 7th century. Hwarang are not a myth. They are documented. Real teenage elites who stand out in crowds because of rank, clothes, and very deliberate grooming. Your mother and attendants lean into the moment. Hair gets longer and smoother. Robes upgrade from normal noble to peak fashion. Colors and patterns still follow bone rank rules, but they now push right to the edge of what the law allows. You are being styled for the role. Then comes the decision. A leading figure chooses you and a few other boys to form or join a Hwarang group. Each group has a central Hwarang leader, and many followers called Nangdo. Buddhist monks and court elders advise them, you are no longer just a noble child. You are now part of a state-approved youth corps. There is a ritual element. Sources describe Hwarang associated with sacred mountains, with Maitreya, and with songs and processions. Your group receives a name. You swear loyalty to king, parents, friends. You agree to fight when called. You nod along as if this is normal teenage life. From that day on, you walk through Seorabeol as a marked person. You are Silla property. The kingdom has taken your bone rank, your face, and your nerves, and turned them into a public symbol called Flower Youth. Learning the 5 Commandments. Your new life as a Flower Youth starts in a lecture hall, not on a battlefield. You want a sword? You get a monk with a calm voice and a long list. Violence can wait. First, they rewire your brain. The monk writes 5 lines. These are the famous 5 commandments for secular life. You will hear them so often they might as well be tattooed on your skull. Be loyal to the king. Be filial to your parents. Be faithful to your friends. Never retreat in battle. Be careful when taking life. The rules sound simple. They are not. Loyalty to the king means you do not just serve the throne. You serve the current body in the royal seat, even if court politics get dirty. Filial piety means you obey parents who may trade your future for family gain. Faith with friends means you do not betray the guy who might drag you into a suicidal charge. Never retreat means stand firm when every part of you wants to run. Be careful taking life is the soft voice trying to stand up to all the others. You repeat each line. The monk drills you with questions. What if the king is wrong? What if your friend is a coward? What if saving your parents means breaking a law? You are not just asked to memorize. You are forced to rank your values, then live with the order. Behind the monk's back is a second layer: Confucian virtues, humaneness, righteousness, propriety, wisdom, trustworthiness. You read short passages from older Chinese texts. You copy them in careful brushstrokes, ink on paper, then ink on habit. You learn that a real Hwarang is not only beautiful and brave, he is supposed to be a walking moral ad for Silla. People will judge the kingdom by how you act in a market, in a temple, in a tavern, in a trench. No pressure. There are moments of dark comedy. You and your friends swear to never retreat, then almost faint standing too long in full gear under the sun. You promise to be pure and noble, then gossip about who cried during practice. The kingdom wants saints and heroes. It gets teenagers with homework and very sharp weapons on the way. Nature trips and spiritual training. You wake up before sunrise and someone is already yelling about mountains. Welcome to the next stage of flower youth life. The kingdom has fed you ethics. Now it wants your body, your breath, and your free time. Your group moves out of Scapegoats in a long line, robes hitched up, boots on, bows and small drums slung over shoulders. This is Pyongyang, the way of wind and moon, a mix of hiking trip, field school, and spiritual boot camp. You are going to sacred peaks, river bends, and shrines marked long before your birth. You travel with monks, older attendants, and other Hwarang. There are songs for the road. There are rules for when you can talk and when you should stay silent. The land itself is a classroom. Every valley and ridge comes with a story about kings, battles, or spirits that do not like to be ignored. At a mountain site, the schedule flips from noble comfort to controlled discomfort. You chant sutras. You bow until your thighs shake. You hold still in meditation while legs cramp and bugs crawl on your skin. Then you stand up to practice forms, stances, and breathing drills. No one calls this vacation. It is state-sponsored character building. The view is great. The expectations are higher. On rest breaks, you compose short verses. Some praise Maitreya, the future Buddha. Some praise the king. Some quietly complain about the blisters. Senior Hwarang, check your wording for respect. Monks check it for doctrine. Everyone checks that you are still upright. Nights are another test. Fires burn low. Stories roll out about earlier Hwarang who became generals or died young and glorious. You listen, half proud and half alarmed. You come home from each journey thinner, tougher, and slightly less impressed with comfort. Weapons, horses, and battle drills. Your sword dreams finally pay off. Training shifts from chanting on mountains to sweating on fields outside Scapegoats. The ground shakes with hooves. The air smells like leather, oil, and teenage panic. You are now learning how to turn your pretty face into a state weapon. Instructors do not care about your poetry skills. They care about how fast you draw a blade and how long you can hold a shield. You start with archery, the pride of Silla forces. Composite bows hit targets at serious range. Miss too many shots and the instructor looks at you like you are wasting royal resources. Then come spears, long shafts, iron heads, drills in tight lines. A spear wall keeps cavalry away and breaks infantry charges. You learn to thrust, step, and keep formation. Someone always forgets their stepping rhythm and hits a friend. The instructor solves this with more drills and louder shouting. Mounted training is the real prize. Horses are expensive. Only high-ranked troops get to ride. You climb up, try to look noble, then nearly fall off when the horse decides it dislikes you. Instructors teach you to fight from the saddle, control speed, and stay upright during sudden turns. This skill turns elite youth into battlefield leaders. Without it, you stay in the mud with everyone else. Armor fittings take time. You wear lamellar plates tied together, heavy enough to feel, light enough to move. You practice walking, running, and breathing under the weight. Every day ends with sore shoulders and bruises in places you did not know existed. Formations become your new religion. Lines, wedges, flanks, signal flags, drum beats. You learn to follow orders fast. You learn to hold position when arrows start flying. The 5 commandments echo again. Never retreat. That rule feels different once you see arrows embedded in wooden targets. There are glimpses of future legends. Older Hwarang talk about Kim Yu-sin, a young noble rising through ranks who will command massive armies. His name spreads through training fields like a rumor of greatness. You try not to panic at the thought of fighting under someone famous. First skirmishes on the frontier. Orders arrive. You are sent out of Scapegoats with a unit of Hwarang and Nangdo followers. No more drills. No more safe targets. The three kingdoms are locked in border fights. Silla wants control of key passes near the Han River Valley in the 630s. Baekje and Goguryeo want the same ground. You are now part of the struggle. Your first task is patrol duty, long marches through valleys and forest roads. Villages sit half empty, farmers watch from doorways. They know armies move here. They know raids come fast. You move quietly, bow in hand, armor creaking, trying to look calm. The first clash is small. Scouts see movement. Your commander signals. Arrows fly. You hear a scream. This is not training. Bodies fall and stay down. Your stomach drops. You remember the rule to never retreat. You also remember that the enemy does not care about your moral code. Border fights are messy. Records show many small engagements long before the big wars of 660. These skirmishes decide supply lines, road control, and morale. You are part of teams guarding mountain passes and river crossings. A lost patrol can lead to a larger attack. Your unit protects traders, messengers, and grain carts. The kingdom runs on that grain. Losing it starves armies. Losing roads isolates forts. State survival rests on young fighters who barely know how to sleep in armor. You learn fast. Fires stay small. Camp talk stays quiet. You rotate watch shifts. You track footprints in mud. You learn which trails can hide an ambush. You hate fog. It hides movement and makes every tree look like an attacker with a spear. There are brutal lessons. One skirmish ends with a friend hit by an arrow. He bleeds out within minutes. Training never covered the part where he calls for help, and no healer arrives. You hold the line because the commander orders it. The fight ends. He does not get back up. Campaigns in the Unification Wars. You return home for a short break. Then history knocks. The year is 660. Silla forms a major alliance with Tang China. Yes, the empire with huge armies and shiny bureaucracy. The goal is simple. Crush Baekje in the southwest. After that, knock down Goguryeo in the north. You are now a tiny piece in a massive plan. The army gathers near the western front. Tens of thousands of Silla troops move with Tang fleets and soldiers. Supply wagons stretch for miles. Officers shout orders that echo across fields. You march toward Baekje territory, feeling both proud and terrified. This is no border fight. This is a kingdom-ending event. Baekje has strong fortresses. The famous one is Sabi. Tang ships attack by river. Silla forces attack on land. You help cut off roads and block food deliveries. Records note the fall of Baekje in 660 after a fast collapse once leaders surrendered. Ordinary soldiers fight on, but leadership cracks. The kingdom ends. You watch nobles dragged away, their royal line broken. The next target is Goguryeo, a fortress-loving powerhouse in the north. It takes years. Major assaults in 661 fail. Goguryeo walls hold. Disease hits troops. Supplies strain. Records mention harsh winters and heavy losses. You march again in 667 with new forces. In 668, Goguryeo finally falls after internal betrayal and combined attacks. The unification of the peninsula under Silla becomes real. You are there for the grind, the hunger, and the siege smoke. Your role is support and control. You lead units that secure captured towns. You escort envoys. You carry messages between commanders and Tang officers. You also try to stop looting by angry troops. Good luck with that. War brings out the worst in everyone. You see how alliances feel on the ground. Tang officers treat Silla troops like junior partners. Some Silla commanders resent it. You hear arguments over who gets credit. You also hear whispers that Tang wants more than a friendly Korea. You keep your head down. You want to live long enough to retire. Victories come with cost. Soldiers freeze in northern winds. Disease spreads in camps. Food shortages kill more men than arrows. You bury friends without markers. Government administration roles. You come home from war expecting rest. The kingdom has other plans. Unified Silla needs officials, not wandering veterans. Your bone rank makes you eligible for real office. Congratulations! You survive battle long enough to become a paperwork machine. You enter the central bureaucracy in Gyeongju. Offices fill the palace district. Clerks copy records in classical Chinese. Officials debate tax rights and land grants. The sound of war drums disappears. The sound of brushes on bamboo slips replaces it. Your first job is not glamorous. You supervise land registers in a district. Silla controls new territories after 668. Someone must count fields, households, and grain. That someone is you. You travel with escorts, visit villages, check who owns what, and mark it down. You never imagined your life would hinge on rice tallies. The bone rank system controls your career ceiling. True bone nobles hold the highest offices. Head ranks fill lower posts. Records show strict limits on titles and authority tied to rank. You cannot rise above your birth level, no matter how many battles you survive or how smart you are. Promotion charts look less like merit and more like a locked staircase. It does not matter that you fought at Baekje or marched north in winter. Birth still beats effort. Meetings drain your patience. Governors report crop failures. Temple officials request exemptions. Local elites complain about taxes. You learn fast that civil rule is messy. Wars end kingdoms. Bureaucracy preserves them. Your military past follows you. Soldiers salute you in towns. Villagers treat you like a hero. That fades once you order higher taxes or deny petitions. Nothing kills admiration faster than enforcing state policy. You write reports for the Central Council. You review cases of land disputes. You send recommendations to ministers. Some get approved. Some vanish in the palace maze. You begin to understand that power is not just orders. Power is paperwork that actually reaches someone who cares. Years pass. You gain skill. You gain weight. You lose patience. Deepening Buddhist ties and patronage. Your hair starts to gray. Your knees complain about stairs. The court still pulls you in, but your heart drifts toward temples. Silla is a Buddhist kingdom in full bloom. Monks shape politics, culture, and public life. You spent your youth chanting on mountains. Now you return to those lessons with fewer arrows flying at your head. You visit great temples in Gyeongju. Hwangryongsa rises as one of the largest complexes in East Asia. Sources mention a 9-story wooden pagoda built in the 7th century. Architects brag about the height. You stare up and feel your neck pop. Monks claim it protects the kingdom. You hope it protects your back. Donations become part of your routine. Land, grain, cloth, labor. You give because it helps the soul, and because officials respect generous patrons. Temples feed travelers, teach children, and host rituals for national protection. You want good karma and good politics. You sponsor a small shrine near your home. Records show nobles donating slaves, farmland, and gold items to temples. Some donations earn carved names on stone or wood. You like that idea. Your younger self wanted glory in battle. Your older self wants his name spelled correctly on a pillar. Monks recognize you from earlier campaigns. They remember sending blessings to troops. They now offer advice on aging and discipline. You trade stories. They tell you about meditation practice. You tell them about sieges where meditation meant not screaming while rocks hit the walls. You attend memorial rituals for fallen friends. Drums echo in halls. Incense burns thick. You hear names read aloud. Some belong to boys who never reached adulthood. Teaching becomes part of your role. Young nobles ask about virtue and duty. You talk about loyalty, then mention the cost. You talk about never retreating, then mention the graves. At home, you keep a small altar. You light candles. You chant short verses. You feel calmer than you did in government halls. The kingdom still demands service, but you now serve something larger than a throne. Decline of Hwarang status and meaning. Your joints hurt. Younger officials call you respected elder, with the same tone they use for old furniture. The court changes fast. New factions rise. Old heroes fade. The worst part is what happens to the title you carried like armor. Hwarang no longer means elite warrior youth. It starts to mean something closer to pretty boy, with time to waste. Records from later unified Silla show the shift. Court writers complain that young Hwarang focus on songs, dances, and flirting instead of military skill. Monasteries still bless them, but commanders stop trusting them in real campaigns. The core becomes symbolic while real power moves to generals and ministers who did not grow up chanting on mountaintops. Your blood pressure spikes when you hear a merchant call a traveling performer a Hwarang. The term spreads to entertainers, shamans' husbands, even idle nobles who dress well but never train. Historical texts note this decline clearly. The once respected flower youth institution slowly turns into a label for fashionable layabouts. You survived sieges and watched kingdoms fall. Now, street gossip uses your title as a joke. The insult lands harder than any spear. You meet a new generation of nobles. They admire the legends but avoid the discipline. They complain about early mornings and armor weight. They hold lutes instead of bows. They pose for crowds and call it duty. You stare and wonder if the kingdom deserves whatever happens next. Court politics fracture. Royal assassinations and rebellions shake the palace. You watch as powerful families fight for control. The once unified state strains under corruption and regional tensions. You recognize the warning signs. You saw Baekje collapse when leadership faltered. You remember Goguryeo falling after internal betrayal. Now you see similar cracks at home. You spend more time at temples. Fewer young nobles show up for training trips. They prefer parties in the capital. Monks sigh. You sigh harder. You sit outside your home and watch the sun hit the royal tomb mounds. You once walked as a symbol of Silla strength. Now you watch the symbol dissolve, while you stay very real, very tired, and painfully aware that the kingdom forgot what made it strong. You are property. That is the first thing you need to understand about your new life. Not a person, not a subject of the great kingdom of Egypt, not even a particularly interesting footnote in history. You are an asset. A living, breathing, thinking asset who will have opinions and preferences and probably a few thoroughly understandable grievances, but an asset nonetheless. Welcome to the royal harem of ancient Egypt. Try not to touch anything. Before we go any further, let us be very clear about what the word harem actually means, because if you are picturing something out of a Victorian painting, with gauzy curtains and women eating grapes, while a dramatically backlit sultan broods in the corner, you have been misled by about 2,000 years of Orientalist fantasy. The ancient Egyptian royal harem, known as the Ipit Nesut, or sometimes the Perkeneret, was less a den of erotic indulgence and more a sprawling administrative compound that happened to contain a lot of women. Think less, Scheherazade's pleasure palace and more, a very well-funded semi-enclosed government department, with perfume, and politics. A genuinely lethal amount of politics. How you got here, the path that brought you to this place was, almost certainly, not a pleasant one. Let us survey the options, because ancient Egypt was an equal opportunity enslaver of foreign peoples. Option 1. You were captured in war. Egypt under the New Kingdom pharaohs was a military empire of considerable ambition, and those ambitions generated enormous quantities of prisoners. Ramesses II, who ruled for 67 years and had no concept of personal restraint in any area of his life, conducted campaigns into Nubia, Libya, the Levant, and Hittite territories. When the armies came home, they brought people with them. The Egyptians called war captives squor ankh, meaning living prisoners, perhaps the most bureaucratically chilling term for a human being ever devised. You were processed, categorized, assigned. Option 2. You were purchased. Ancient Egypt participated in a Mediterranean slave trade that moved people across remarkable distances. If you were young, could sing or dance or play music, or had attributes someone along the chain of custody considered palace-worthy, you were bought, cleaned up, and sent upriver to wherever the royal household was residing that season. Option 3. You were born into it. Your mother was in palace service, so you are in palace service. The tidiest origin story from an administrative standpoint, you have grown up inside these walls, you know the rules, and you have had your entire childhood to make peace with the fact that this is your life. Option 4. You are a foreign princess. This sounds more glamorous until you realize that a foreign princess sent to join the pharaoh's household is an extremely well-dressed hostage. Your father made a political alliance and sealed it by sending you to court. You were given a title, assigned quarters in a palace compound, and never, under any circumstances, allowed to go home. Amenhotep III received a Mitannian princess named Tatakipa in this fashion. She was given everything she could want and absolutely no option to decline. Egypt was very good at making captivity comfortable. However you arrived, here you are. Let us figure out where exactly you fit. The hierarchy. The royal harem is not a flat organization. Nothing in ancient Egypt is flat. Egyptian society runs on hierarchy the way the Nile runs on water, and the palace household is no exception. At the very top sits the great royal wife, the principal queen, whose name appears in royal cartouches alongside the pharaohs, whose children are the presumptive heirs. Under Ramesses II, this was Nefertari. You do not approach her unless invited. You do not make eye contact unless invited. You probably do not breathe loudly in her vicinity without an invitation. Below the great royal wife comes